On today's episode of Locked On Avalanche, which hockey players do we dislike so much that if they came to the Colorado Avalanche, we would still dislike them? Let's talk about that. New episode of Locked On Avalanche coming at you.
You're Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Locked On Avalanche podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Chris Maselli. With me, as always, is Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. Thank you for tuning in and making it your first listen of the day. Always appreciated. Make sure you're following us on our social media outlets, LOPN_Avalanche on Twitter X, Locked On Avalanche on Instagram and Threads. Questions, comments, concerns, and opinions, lockedonavalanche@gmail.com. And make sure you're following us on our YouTube channel. Hit subscribe, get notified when a new show goes live, and subscribe to our subtext as well. Link to that's in the show notes below. And when you do chat with Kyle and I one-on-one, we get your opinion, everything Avalanche related, which we share on this very podcast. Like we will do, that opening question that I threw out there was from subtext. That was from Vargar, a longtime subtexter. Threw that one out late after we had taken a lot of questions. But he threw that one out. We're like, oh, we have to bring that up because that's a really good question. So I threw that out to the subtext people. We'll get their take, our take. And then as far as takes go, you see if you're watching over on YouTube, controversial takes. That's another question that was asked, which we'll get to a little bit as well. So much. This is off season. We're not supposed to have this much to talk about. What's going on here?
You know what? I love it. Bring it on. The mailbag overflows.
Yeah. Cup runneth over. So, but where we're going to start is with a former Avalanche player, and that is Ryan Johansen, who very briefly was with the Avalanche, unceremoniously was traded at the trade deadline, his first trade deadline with the Avs. And he was out the door. We all know the story. He was brought in to solve that 2C problem. Just didn't work out, and the Avs unloaded him to Philly, where it's been a time for him since he got traded to the Flyers.
He was brought in to be the 2C, but we were happy to see him go.
Okay, oh, I like that. So yeah, he has never played a second with the Flyers, and as soon as he got there, it's just been odd. He said he had some injury, and the Flyers never really accused the Avalanche of withholding any info or any injury that he had, because he didn't have one. He played right up until he was traded. I think this all boils down to him and John Tortorella. Just they don't get along. They were together when they were, I think, in Columbus, and since then they don't see eye to eye on things. And even though years have passed since they've been in each other's orbit, they still just apparently can't let bygones be bygones. And he never played for them. And the Flyers are putting him on waivers with the anticipation of terminating his contract for I love the terminology. What is it? Material breach. I'll read what that means in a minute. But just your take on all this, because Ryan Johansen went from that, what we were just saying, like the brief summary of brought into Colorado, a team with Stanley Cup hopes, to play a pivotal role to solve a problem that they had since Nazem Kadri left, making $8 million. You know what I mean? And although the average only paying half of that. And from the trade deadline till this offseason, he doesn't have a job right now.
Oh, brother.
Crazy.
Like, take a step back. The Ryan Johansen saga that was last year, where there was a parade of Avalanche fans like, the Avs are back. We have our 2C. This team they're crazy deep. Look at this. And in the course of a season, the man went from coming into a Stanley Cup contender to vanishing into thin air. I was at the Wilkes-Barre Scranton game against the Lehigh Valley Phantoms just to watch Ryan Johansen, who was scratched, never showed up, wasn't even there. And for him to fall completely out in one season is shocking.
It is. It really is. I mean, an $8 million player, you just wouldn't think, you can have the conversation if he's living up to that number, which over the last year he was not. But still, I mean, you earned that contract at some point. To just fall from grace that quickly is just kind of rare. As far as this terminating of the contract, this is from, let's see, right. Well, it's right in the players agreements. The NHL has standard player contracts, which provide paragraph 12 that the team may terminate a player's contract if the player shall A, fail, refuse, or neglect to obey the club's rules governing training and conduct of players, if such failure, refusal, or neglect should constitute a material breach. B, fail, refuse, or neglect to render his services hereunder or in any other manner material breach this standard player's contract. I know there's probably a lot of people out there saying, just Val Nichushkin. Contracts are weird. You know what I mean? And I don't know if you can just take what's going on with Ryan Johansen and just teleport that over to Val Nichushkin and say, well, that's the same thing. They're not the same thing, but that doesn't mean like they both don't fall under the same category. The NHL has told the Avalanche that no, he does not fall under that category. They might have gotten more concrete answer as to why. We don't have that, but Ryan Johansen, I think, is just flat out refusing to play for Philly. So Philly's like, we want him to play. Maybe I'm just saying that, like, if this is the case, Philly's just saying that we want him to play, but he's not, and we can't force him to. So the league is like, okay, if you have a player that doesn't want to play, you can.
And you locked up there, but no, it's an interesting discussion because Ryjo is refusing to play. They signed him to play. Like Philly expected a player to come in and play, and he's not. And then the camp of the Val Nichushkin, where we pay him to play, and he had the Seattle incident, and then he addressed it early in the season, and then popped a test in the playoffs. Like, he's in a way also choosing not to play by making the decisions that he does. And when you see the moves the Avs are making when it comes to the cap and signing goalies and $1 million forwards and defensemen every day, you have to wonder what the end game is and how much of cap relief are they going to get if they go down this road. Because you heard McFarland, right? One of the first press conferences they had when it came to Nichushkin was, we explored every option when it came to his contract.
Right.
Which points to they were trying to figure out how to get rid of this contract.
Yeah, I'm sure they were. I'm sure they were exploring it. Yeah.
And I know they said you can't, but I wonder if that has anything to do with his eligibility and reinstatement in November.
What do you mean?
That they can't terminate him while he's in this.
While he's in it.
But in November, when he is eligible and reinstatable,
I don't think you can do that. I mean, if he's reinstated, once he's reinstated, he's no different than any other roster player. And you can't just turn around and terminate a contract from a roster player. You know what I mean? Like once his suspension is done, he's served it. So he's done his time. And now he's back as a player. You can't just go terminating him because of what he did in the past now. Like, that's not.
Well, does the suspension protect him from this move?
I think it does. And because the suspension is it's a procedure. This is a program that he is in. You know what I mean? And I think that is the main reason why the Avalanche cannot do anything. Their hands are tied right now, is because the league has a protocol. They have a procedure for people who go into this program, and he is on level 3 of it right now. And if he does it again, it's another year. I still don't think they can do anything with that, because that still falls within this program. What Ryan Johansen is doing doesn't fall under any program. It just falls under the laws of Ryan Johansen of I don't want to play with you. And he can't do that because he's under contract with the Fly. He can go request a trade if he wants to, which doesn't sound like he did, which I don't know why he wouldn't just say, I don't know. It just seems like it's because of the nature of what Val Nichushkin has done and how it's happened multiple times now. I think people are saying like you can terminate that. And the league is saying, no, you can't, because we have programs for guys of what he's going through. We don't for Ryan Johansen. Ryan Johansen just flat out refusing to play.
His program is actually play the game. Like it's
yeah.
What are you trying to achieve here? Like, if it's this bad and you can't get out, retire.
He's got $8 million for reason to not retire. You know what I mean? So
now
I don't.
It just doesn't make any sense, and especially this is NHL. This is cream of the crop. To quote Macho Man Randy Savage, it's the cream of the crop, and you don't see stuff like this, especially of his caliber, and it's just confusing, and it also shows that nobody's biting on a trade to bring him in if this is the theatrics that you're going to get.
I mean, can Ryan Johansen still play in the league? Yeah, somewhere. God, there's 32 teams, 4 lines in each team. Like, yeah, he's got to have some value somewhere. Not what it was, not $8 million worth, but you don't have to pay the full $8 million because Nashville's on the hook for half of it. The Avs traded their half to Philly, so they have the other. I mean, you wouldn't really. You could take him in. Philly could take another half of the half. And you wouldn't really, be paying him all that much money to do something on your team. It's like San Jose or something like that could just bring in a veteran. I don't know, but it's kind of amazing how it's just like you said, gone from in a hockey season playing for the Colorado Avalanche to nothing.
Or you could be Patrick Laine and be happy nowhere you go and ask to be traded everywhere.
That's go check out Locked On Canadians for that. They are ecstatic over there. So, all right, let's get our first break in right now. When we come back, the question that we asked at the top of the episode: players we dislike, if they came over to the Avs, would we put our bias aside and like them, or would we still dislike them for some reason? Let's talk about that coming up next. All right, first, we're going to hear from Indeed because we're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed, because if you need to hire, you need Indeed, which is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. So join over the 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of Locked On Avalanche will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support Locked On Avalanche by saying you heard about Indeed on this very podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. If you need to hire, then you need Indeed. All right. So great question by our subtexter, Vargar. I really like this one because it's true. Like, and I've thought of this before, of just guys that you just have disdain for. I don't like using the word hate. It's a very loaded word, and they are human beings. But you can say like you dislike them. Not everybody, I took a psychology class once. This was years ago, and the professor, it stuck with me till now, said, there are people in this world who do not like you. I was like, whoa, man, like I try to be a good person. And it might be just, nothing, you didn't have any interactions with them. They just witnessed you act a certain way from a distance, and just to this day, just have a bad makeup of you. I'm like, man, that really hit hard. And I still think of that to this day. Who are those people out there that don't like me? And why do you not like me?
Oh, I know I have a million.
Yeah.
I
Just check the
completely
comment
understand.
section, right?
Oh, yeah.
So as far as I said, I don't want to use the word hate, but you can dislike players. I mean, there are players in sports that play the game that you don't like the way that they play. And that's especially true in hockey. um, so what about that? What are there some guys out there that you don't like? If they came to the Avalanche, would you still dislike them, or would you put that bias aside and be like, "Hey, they're wearing our colors now. I'm rooting for them," or are there guys there that nope, I still want them to do well, I guess, but it'd be tough to root for them.
I'm going to give you an example of this question that segues into my number one answer.
Mhm.
To everybody who joined the Avalanche bandwagon when they won the cup, there was a time the Avalanche had on the roster in an Avalanche sweater one Devin Dubnyk as a goalie. And there
Yeah,
was not a single episode that I had anything good to say about
that
Devin
is
Dubnyk
true.
in an Avalanche sweater. Fast forward to now,
Yeah,
you will never get me to say anything positive about Jordan Bennington in an Avalanche sweater.
I know that I'll get to some subtext answers. I mean, he's on almost every single one of them.
No, there's no way I could shine anything that you put out there, but Jordan Bennington, I just can't. And this
No,
is
it's
from a
incredible.
dislike level.
Right.
And the same with Dubnyk. Just the level of dislike I had for Dubnyk for so long. The
Yeah.
same with Bennington, but times 1,000.
Bennington, don't you think like that's true for every other fan base? The guy's alienated almost every other team. I can't imagine any fan base being happy if like he's found his spot in St. Louis and they love him at the cost of every other fan base that I can think of that just does not like that guy, does not like his attitude, does not like the crybaby antics that he does when he has a bad game. Yeah, I think that he is right up there on almost every Avalanche fans. And I mean, at this stage, if he came over, I don't think he'd be even if he was backup role. I mean, if he was a starter, that'd be so tough to stomach day in and day out. He's your number one guy
I wouldn't
as
like
a
him as
backup role.
Bernie.
As a backup role, you only have to see him every once in a while. Maybe it's a little bit more. You can stomach that a little bit more, but it'd be tough. It'd be tough. It's sticking with the division for me as far as one of the more hated guys, and I again hate using hate, but man, this is a tough guy to like. Jamie Benn. Jamie
I get
Benn
it.
is just,
Yeah.
but he is one of those guys that and I think this is true for most of the guys that we're going to bring up. If he's on your team, you love him,
Yeah.
absolutely love him. He's your captain. You know what I mean? Like so. Um, but I just don't. I don't. He just has those dead eyes that just he doesn't seem like he has uh anything. The only thing he wants to do is just make your life miserable and just cheap shots and just stuff like that. I don't have time for that because he's skilled. And when you have players that are skilled and they do moronic things like Jamie Benn does, it just makes me be like, why are you doing that? You have the skill. You don't need that part of your game. Just knock it off. And he continues to do stupid things like that. But
Well,
he's
see,
on.
I would agree with you, but then we also had Zach Parise as a member of the roster last year. And
I never
after
had a
about a
problem.
week or two, I was like, you know
Yeah,
what? He's not that bad.
I never had a problem with Zach Parise.
Oh, I
I
did.
think I think
I did wild days. Oh, for
well,
sure.
that's what it is. Just the team he played for. I didn't mind how he played. It was with Jamie Benn, it's just the style that he plays. Not about it. I know some people are. It's not for me. Not another guy that I have on my list is he's not like a cheap shot artist or anything like that. Solely based on the attitude. You're looking at me weird.
Matt Dumba?
No, no, I don't have a huge problem with
Oh,
Dumba.
or
I mean, I
Jordan
know.
Greenway.
No, I Kucherov, man.
Oh, yeah.
Kucherov.
Oh,
I
yeah.
just like. I mean, clearly, like you know what I mean. Like he's one of the top players in the league. Would I dislike him if he came over to the Avs? I'd love his production. You know what I mean? if he came over now, that would be. I think I'd be all for it. But man, is he just, a wet towel has more whatever than he does. It's just I don't like his in the All-Star game, the festivities for that just really rubbed me the wrong way. Any interview he does, he's just so monotone. And I know a lot of hockey players are, but he's not one for me. But because he's so good, if he came over the Avs, you'd probably root for him. Come on.
Yeah, I get that one. Like, and my second would have been Matt Dumba to throw him in there. My last one, easily, Tony DeAngelo.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's in the Tom Wilson, Trouba in that route. There's just why are you doing those things that you are doing?
On and off the
you
ice.
not thinking? Yeah, exactly. Are you not thinking? So, and I didn't really rank these 1, 2, or 3, anything like that, but climbing up the list for me, like recently, is Sam Bennett.
Oh yeah,
on Florida.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot for me to feel bad for Brad Marchand because he's probably on this list for a lot of people. And I did. That shot, that cheap shot that he gave him in the playoffs that year, I felt bad for Brad Marchand. And if you do that, you are on my list. So Sam Bennett, and according to, I remember The Athletic did that survey every year, who's the most hated player. I think Marchand is still at the top of that, but Bennett is really closing the gap between him and Marchand. So Bennett's on there too.
Oh, if the Avs got Brad Marchand, I would tattoo his number on my chest. It would
you like him?
It would be the most perfect little fit.
Tough to say. I don't know. I don't know if I could do that. I mean, we get to some subtext people here. Eric says, here you go, Brad the Rat, Jordan Cryberry Baby Binnington. So those are 2 for him. Who's this one here? Is this Tanya? That's Tanya. She lists them. Patrick Kane, number 1.
Yes, agree. 1000%.
Kane will be on a lot of people's list. Binnington 2. Milan Lucic at 3.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Jamie Benn at 4, and she got Matt Rempe at 5. I think Rempe
he's cool.
Yeah.
He's cool Rempe? To me. Yeah.
I mean, he's gonna. You always say like in football and stuff like that. Oh, he's gonna kill someone. Matt Rempe seriously could. If he doesn't control himself, he really could do or paralyze somebody.
I think Curtis McDermott changed my opinion on a lot of players of that ilk.
Zach says,
oh, I think you locked up there because that was some suspense, but no. And Milan Lucic is a good pick as well. I like these various picks. And then we got you back.
Okay. So Zach said Tom Wilson, and I think I froze up before I said Ovechkin. He has Ovechkin on there.
It crossed my mind, but like kind of to that Sidney Crosby effect, like you hate his talent, but then now getting him at this time, you're like, what's the point? It's gonna be like a Ginla when he was. I mean, he's just here chasing a record.
To dislike him though. To dislike, I mean, to me, we've talked about this before. Like guys that are so good in their prime, they're just like the Michael Jordans and stuff. Like you hate them because they're so good. And then at the end of their careers, when it's winding down, you appreciate them a lot more, and then you start rooting for them. Maybe that's like, if he's talking about like, middle career Ovechkin, I can see that. But now I don't think you can hate him. But okay. Coy says Ryan Reeves, Brad Marchand, Corey Perry, and Jacob Trouba. And Marie says Binnington. I love this one. She says Jordan Binnington, Vander Kane, and Jordan Binnington. So she does not like Jordan Binnington. Yeah. She wouldn't trade for the 3 Jordan Binningtons.
I wouldn't either.
No.
$5 and $1 million. I wouldn't.
And they would never do it. And then Vargar, the guy who threw this question out here, Binnington, Vander Kane, Patrick Kane, Matt Duchene, D'Angelo, Ovechkin, and Jamie Benn. He says, I don't love Crosby, but it would be nice to have every call go your way. uh, and he threw Nichushkin out there, man. Yeah.
I almost put Zadorov on this list.
Oh, Provorov. I missed that. He said Provorov too.
I almost put Zadorov on here.
Zadorov, really?
Why? He was just a piece of lumber out there to me.
But he does it the right way. That's his job, and I feel like the way he does it is the way that I would like a guy in that role to do it.
Again, like Curtis McDermott, he offered you so much, and then he like improved that slap shot for a while. Like Big Z, you knew what you were getting, and it became a tiresome act towards the end of his Avalanche tenure.
Wow, interesting. Didn't know you felt that way. All right. So I'm sure there's many others out there. So please feel free to comment away in the comment section. One more thing that we're going to get to, and another question that was asked was about controversial takes that we might have. So we'll wrap the show up with that right after this. All right, first, let's hear it from FanDuel. And you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you. And now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and you get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. And with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. I did subscribe to the Sunday Ticket last year when it first year went over to YouTube TV. It was excellent. It seems they've even improved it this year, because last year they had the 4 screens or 3 screens if you wanted to. You couldn't pick what games you wanted. You had to pick. They had a bunch of them, and you could only pick them in groups. This year they've added, you can select any ones you want and have your own 3 or 4 games up on the screen. So they're improving the service after 1 year. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sports book. Once again, that is FanDuel. All right, we'll wrap the show up with another question that we got about our do we have any controversial takes that kind of would have people kind of gunning for us? The most controversial hockey take with that will have everyone asking for your head. So I don't know if any of mine would have me people like gunning for my head, but I do have a few, I guess, that are maybe controversial. So go for it if you got any.
Yeah, I have 2 that would be on the realm of controversial, and I'll start with number 1.
Okay.
The league doesn't need to be this big.
What's that?
NHL does not need to be. They're just
Ooh, you don't need this many teams.
Relegate or get rid of. Especially after the Arizona experience that we went through for the last 2 years, it's kind of embarrassing to the league. And when you're looking at teams like San Jose, there's some Columbus. I get it's wonderful. You're expanding the footprint, but come on, it doesn't need to be this big.
Well, I mean, get ready because there's more coming, man.
I know it's watering down the product. I understand the NHL is making money off this. It's all wonderful, but
I like when they did it before. Like a big reason they feel like it didn't work in Atlanta was because the player pool was not as like robust as it is now. And it was kind of watered. Like you're getting guys that had no business being in the NHL playing in the NHL, and that product was bad. Since then, it has grown, and there are a lot of guys that can play in this league now. So there's more reasons why. Money is the key, right? That is the big one. But in listening to like Elliot Friedman and stuff like that, I think you're gonna be in like the 36 range, right? Like eventually.
I've heard the same, but
yeah,
it doesn't need to be. I'll be the one to say stop.
Okay. All right. One of mine is everybody loves to throw out like the East Coast bias thing. I don't feel like that's a thing. I kind of feel like that's just kind of maybe it was in the past. I can't tell because in my teens, I'm not really paying attention to stuff like that. And maybe that's when ESPN, when they were kind of new and they are on the East Coast, maybe, and they had such a pull back then. They don't anymore, and you can get content anywhere at any time. And with the advent of the internet and social media and stuff like that, it's just like we live on a computer screen now and not on coasts. So yeah, if you're a fan of a team on the other side of the country, you don't feel like that. So and I just don't feel like in the media world they are honing in on the East Coast teams more than they are on the West Coast teams. Uh, I'm sure there's some
I
people that disagree with that, but I'm just not there.
I think that debate eroded when Gretzky went to the Kings, and I think the advent of technology um, goes to your point, and I think it's made it accessible anywhere you are,
Yeah.
and people can pick a favorite team, whether you're from Alabama and you pick a favorite team and enjoy that team just like anybody else.
Mhm.
So I think that has gone away. I agree.
And then when you think about it, like as far as like the major markets go, you have New York, and your major markets are New York, Chicago, LA. So it's kind of
Mhm.
spread out across the country. Like those are your three big ones. So I mean, if all the major markets were on the East Coast, I mean, I know Boston is kind of in there, but not a little bit. I don't know. I just don't think I never get into that argument with people because I'm just not. I don't think it's a thing. So.
My other controversial take:
Mhm.
NHL needs to wake up and quit trying to be one of the big four leagues, and they need to just start catering to themselves and hockey fans and quit trying to be like everybody else.
I mean, I get where you're going with that, but I don't think they can stop doing that because that's, they can't just say, hey, we are what we are and we're not going to change. And we have, they have to try to keep expanding the game and trying to keep expanding fan bases and stuff like that. So I know I kind of feel on that because it's like, hey, I like the little world, and it's not that little, but it's this little world that we have with the hockey community. Honestly, man, I don't want it to be like the NFL.
See,
I,
and
I
that's what
I
I'm
know they do, but I kind of don't because then you're just too big, and it's just I'm not about that either.
and that's what I'm like. NHL they need to understand, like, they have something special here, and they could cultivate it like baseball went through almost near death and revitalized itself into something like just a mere tweak of the game, made it a
Mhm.
really enjoyable product. And the NHL needs to quit trying to chase these big three that are above them and do everything like them and compare themselves. Every time you hear NHL numbers, it's compared to. They need to take pride in our great game and build around that, and then let that stand out and create some individual identity around that. And I just
Mhm.
hate because the more you keep chasing, the NFL is going to continue to grow and you're never going to catch up to them. And it's an endless hamster wheel. They
Yeah.
need to start taking pride in what they have and start thinking outside the box and cultivate the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think they are happy with what they have while still need. I mean, you have if you don't expand it, you're just hitting a wall, and the revenue will just dry up. So I get what you're saying. I kind of agree with it, but they're never going to do that because they have to keep fighting and keep making the
Expanding
game
more
bigger than it
teams.
is. Yeah, they do. As far as teams go, that's my other take. Um, I get it. It looks good on television. We're really the only league that does something like this, but it's just not true. And that's the original six. The original six is not the original six. And it's cool I have a sweatshirt with the original six logo and the six teams on it. It's a nice selling piece, but it drives me crazy when you have fan bases of an original 16 outside of Montreal because they're the only ones that can brag that they're an original team. It's really the original one. It's them. Maybe the original one and a half, if you want to say Toronto is in there, because there was something fluky with, like, there was two teams in Toronto, one folded, and the one that remained ended up being the Maple Leafs, and they inherited some of those the players from the other. I think that was the St. Patrick's, I believe.
Or the
That
arenas.
could have been whatever one it was. Folded, so they took some of those players in, and then they just continued playing. So they're kind of like an original 16, but not really. But all of these holier than thou fan bases that are like, you're not an original 16. Well, neither are you if you're not Montreal. And it just drives me crazy when those fan bases just get, stick their noses up to everybody else and thinking that you've been around a long time, not taking that away from you. Good for you on that. But no, like the league did not start off with U6 teams. It was around before.
Yep.
And so that kind of drives me crazy. And I know it's a very, I like it. I like that it's there. I like that it exists, but I just wish people knew like the true history of it and didn't see those 6 teams and think the league started with those 6 teams, because it didn't. Sell all the sweatshirts and t-shirts you want, because again, I think it's kind of a cool thing. But when fan bases get into this, everybody else is an expansion team, you are too. So let's settle it down a little bit.
I mean, good grief, it's been over 100 years. It's now like, who cares, boomer? Like when you have teams like Florida winning Stanley Cups in Vegas, nobody cares how long you've been around.
Right. But it's for some reason, like for the original 6 and the original teams in hockey just seems to be more important to the history of the league than any other sport, which is kind of cool, but you got to tell the entire story, and they're not when they just say like, oh yeah, we're part of it.
That's never going to happen. They're not going to correct that.
Yeah. What's your take on fighting, real quick? I mean, do you feel like you have a take on are you one of those people that feel like it should be banned from the league, or
no?
What?
It doesn't have a place anymore. The game has evolved from when it was like in the 90s and 2000s, where that's what it was, a spectacle, and the physicality was something you feared. But if you if you had that physicality, if you have a enforcer on your team, that's your weak part of your team. Like, this game is so fast now, it's so skilled and so precise that having an enforcer and that physicality, you hurt people with skill and the scoreboard. You don't hurt them with your fist anymore.
Yeah, the enforcer role is pretty much gone, right? Yeah. But as far as like fighting in this, like, I don't think it'll ever fully. I shouldn't say that. I mean, there is some talks for trying to get rid of it completely. It's weird because like I don't like headshots. Like I am the proponent of nope, like not for that. But I'm okay with like the fighting aspect of it, because you guys really, every once in a while a guy will take a shot to the head. But most fights are just a lot of tussling. And yeah, you'll get a good shot in there every once in a while. But you also know that guy wants to fight you.
Yeah.
And it's stand up. I'm in front of you. You're in front of me. Let's go. Okay. Old school, like, let's throw some knuckles. The headshots and the blindside shots, like that's different. I'm just talking about like the violence of the sport. Like it's going to be there. So I don't know. Like those are 2 different things. But I'm okay with the fighting, because like I said, one guy wants to fight you, and let's go for it. So
yeah, it's a part of the game. It's not why I go to the game.
No, not at all. Not anymore. It was like NASCAR. You go for the crashes, and then there were a lot of people that did go for the fighting, but you're be sorely mistaken if you're just going to go thinking a fight's going to break out.
Yeah,
you'll get hits, which are okay, but just don't do them blindside. Don't hit him in the head, please. Like that's just serious stuff. So. All right. That will wrap it up for today, everybody. So thank you for tuning in and making this your first listen of the day. That is always appreciated. We'll be back on Friday. There's still a few more great questions which we have to get to. So we'll make our way through those. Anything else that happens between now and then. So once again, thank you for making this your first listen of the day. Always appreciated. He is Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. I am Chris Maselli, and this is the Locked On Avalanche podcast. We'll see you guys on Friday.